Plenty to talk about on today's show. We're going to run through the latest NFL coaching news and rumors and how it pertains to your Falcons. And then we're going to tune into Arthur Blank's press conference and why Arthur Smith was ultimately let go. And finally, The Athletic put out an early head coaching candidates list for the Falcons. So we'll take a peek at that. So a lot of ground to cover. Stick with me and let's get started with this right here. If you are excited for a new coach, hit the thumbs up button. Because our like record here on the channel is 537 likes. I would love to double that number if you are ready to get a coach that's going to come in here and win more than 7 games for the first time in a long time. Now, the big NFL news of the day. Adam Schefter tweeted out, Titans fired head coach Mike Vrabel. Initial reaction was, awful decision by Tennessee. I do not understand who they think they are. And they had an incredible coach in my eyes in Vrabel, who is going to get a job very quickly. Bad decision by Tennessee. Now, how does this relate to the Falcons? Well, I don't think Mike Vrabel, as much as I would like to, go to the Falcons. I don't think Vrabel is going to go down to Atlanta because I think Mike Vrabel is going to go to New England, which has been long rumored his ultimate destination as an NFL head coach. So if Mike Vrabel is going to go to the Patriots, well, that means Bill Belichick has to go somewhere else. And could that be Atlanta? I mean, you might have a 3-way trade here. What if Arthur Smith goes back to Tennessee, Mike Vrabel goes to New England, and Bill Belichick comes down to Atlanta? So I know that we have talked about Bill Belichick before. I'm not going to nauseate you guys on the subject for much longer, but Mike Vrabel being fired by the Titans definitely picks up some steam and traction for Belichick to be released or relieved of his duties in Foxborough, which could be the Falcons' number 1 candidate. And maybe if Belichick is fired, you're going to see Arthur Blank get the wheels moving on getting Belichick down to ATL. Now, I've said before, but I'll reiterate again, I'm passing on Bill Belichick. I know that is absolutely insane to say out loud. He won 6 Super Bowls as the head coach of the New England Patriots, but I think his time has passed him. What he has done since Tom Brady has been very uninspiring. 1 winning season, losing record altogether. I'm not interested in Bill Belichick. I would much rather go down the if Mike Vrabel is an option, but again, I think he's going to New England anyway route, or Ben Johnson, or someone else. Now, I know that Arthur Blank at 81 years old wants to win a Super Bowl while he is still alive. And so going the previous head coaching route might be something he's intrigued by because he went first-time head coach in Arthur Smith. That didn't really work out. When first-time head coach in Dan Quinn, that didn't really work out. So might he try a different way? Previous head coaching experience, and Belichick would be the man for the job if that's the route you want to go down. Now, next up on the show, we're going to talk about Arthur Smith and Arthur Blank and why Arthur Blank, the much richer, although maybe not richer, very close in wealth, fired Arthur Smith because Arthur Blank had a press conference along with the CEO of the Falcons yesterday, and I found a couple of the quotes to be very telling. So let's dive into it here. Arthur Blank on the Falcons this year saying, our record against losing teams this year was abysmal, quite honestly. We have a lot of games. We lost a lot of games we probably shouldn't have lost. And he's not wrong, right? Spot the lie. Look at the Falcons' losses this year. Lions and Jags, that's not looking too shabby, but the Commanders, bottom 3 team in the league. The Titans, bottom 5 team in the league. The Minnesota Vikings at home when Josh Dobbs was still learning his teammates' names. That was an embarrassing loss. The Cardinals in Kyler Murray's first game back. That's one you want back. The Buccaneers at home. The Panthers. I mean, it almost gets worse and worse, and then you get to the worst loss of them all. The now 2-win Carolina Panthers. I ultimately believe and honestly think that Carolina loss sunk Arthur Smith in 2 ways. And it really summarized Arthur Smith's head coaching stint in Atlanta. Horrible loss. Just bad loss. We're not losing to good teams here. Losing to the worst team in football, which kind of sums up the Falcons' 3 years under Arthur Smith. And why did you lose that game? Because of deficient quarterback play. Desmond Ridder with an awful fourth quarter turnover that was just an encapsulation almost of what the Atlanta Falcons quarterback play had been with Arthur Smith as the head coach. Arthur Blank also adding this during his presser. Our quarterback play this year was clearly deficient. There's a lot of things that go into what makes a quarterback successful or not. This is why I feel for Arthur Smith, and this is why some of you guys clown me in the comment section, but I'm not going to be afraid to share my opinions, and that is Arthur Smith was not a perfect head coach. There are better head coaches out there, and there might be better head coach candidates in this pool than Arthur Smith. But I'm not going to stand here and blame Arthur Smith for Desmond Ridder fumbling it at the 1-yard line, Desmond Ridder making horrible decisions on throws at times. Those are things that it doesn't matter who the play caller is, who the head coach is. They are not the ones actually executing plays on the field. And so if you want to blame Arthur Smith for the bad losses against bad teams and questionable play calling at time, hey, I'm with you. I'm not going to disagree. But don't blame Arthur Smith because Desmond Ridder couldn't hold on to the football or Desmond Ridder was colorblind when he was on the field. Those are things that are not in Arthur Smith's control, and they're not in any coach's control. I mean, look at what Ridder and Heineke did this year. The amount of turnovers is just disgusting. It really is. And so you can get a different head coach. You can go get Ben Johnson. You can go get Bill Belichick. What do you think? Bill Belichick's teams were immune to turning the football over? As if Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones did a great job of protecting the ball? No. Doesn't matter who the head coach is. At a certain point, the coach can only coach. The players got to play. And the players under Arthur Smith at the quarterback position did not play well. The Falcons turned the ball over at an ungodly rate this year. 28 total turnovers, 17 interceptions, and 11 fumbles lost. All those numbers, bottom 10 in the National Football League. Now, I know what you're all saying. But Petey, Arthur Smith picked Desmond Ridder. So that was his choice. He made his bed, and now he's got to sleep in it. And you're not necessarily wrong, but let's go back in time for a moment. What choices did he have, right? When he took over the Falcons, he was not going to bring in a brand new quarterback with Matt Ryan still there. So let's go back to 2023, this past draft, okay? Could he have drafted a quarterback? He took Bijan 8th overall, which means Young and C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson were gone. You could make an argument that he could have gone with Will Levis in round 2, although I don't think anyone would have advocated for Will Levis going round 1. You would have to move up all the way to the second pick in round 2 to get Will Levis like the Titans did. We didn't see Hendon Hooker at all this year. We didn't see Jake Haener. Stetson Bennett is, I don't know where he is. Was Aiden O'Connell any better than Desmond Ridder? I'll be hard-pressed to find someone that can say definitively AOC was leaps and bounds better than Desmond Ridder, and the Falcons would have been much better off with AOC. I mean, we can go back to the day 2 and day 3 of the draft of 2023. Clayton Tune sucked. Dorian Thompson-Robinson played a couple of games for the Browns, but I don't think he was definitively better than Desmond Ridder, if at all. Didn't see Sean Clifford. Jaron Hall sucked. Tanner McKee couldn't even beat out Marcus Mariota for the backup job in Philly. And Mariota sucks. Max Duggan was cut before the season started. Okay, so we did not see any quarterback in the 2023 draft class that the Falcons could have realistically gotten perform any better than Desmond Ridder, except for maybe Will Levis. But I would love to ask you guys back in April what your thoughts were on drafting Will Levis. Because my guess is they probably were not very high. So if you don't want to find a quarterback in the 2023 NFL draft to replace Desmond Ridder, how about the actual draft class you selected Desmond Ridder in, right? Does anyone think this team would be much better with Kenny Pickett? Maybe a little, but that's a first-round pick right there, okay? Would anyone prefer Malik Willis, Matt Corral, or Bailey Zappi over Desmond Ridder? I would take Desmond Ridder over all three of those guys. Now, Sam Howell is a miss, but then again, he went round 5. A lot of teams missed on him. So the idea that it's just Arthur Smith who passed on Sam Howell and should be blamed for that, well, then you're blaming all 31 other teams as well. And yes, there's Brock Purdy as Mr. Irrelevant. And again, I apply the same logic, but times 10 to the Sam Howell argument. Everyone passed on Brock Purdy multiple times. So, boo-hoo, Arthur Smith was one of 31 other NFL head coaches and GMs that did not think Brock Purdy was worthy of a selection until the 49ers wanted to get the draft over and go to their after-draft party. So, are we really going to stand here and go, but Arthur Smith picked Desmond Ridder? Does a third-round QB selection define how good of a coach you are? Imagine if every NFL head coach was defined as the QB selected in rounds 3, rounds 4, middle of the draft. You can go look at any team. Every single team has made some middle of the round QB selection regardless of who their quarterback was. Even when Tom Brady was in New England. Jacoby Brissett, Jimmy Garoppolo. That's not a fair way to define a coach. No coach is going to come out looking good if that's the way we are evaluating NFL head coaches based on their third-round QB selections. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's show, I do want to give a big shout-out to our terrific sponsor, which is Prize Picks, because playoff football is here, and if you want to stay extra locked in on the wild card matchups, well, Prize Picks, which is daily fantasy made easy, is the place to visit first. The way Prize Picks works is you select 2 to 6 players and then choose more or less on their projected stats. So let me give you my entries, my selections for this upcoming weekend slate of games. I'm taking the more on Joe Flacco's passing yards. I'm taking the less on Patrick Mahomes' passing yards. Bad weather this weekend at Arrowhead. I like the more on Mike Evans' receiving yards. The Eagles' defense, our producer right now, Jake Chipper, is an Eagles fan, is Swiss cheese, and he would even tell you that. And then Najee Harris, I like the less on his rushing yards because he's not even the best running back on his own team. So go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. That's Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Now, if your counter argument to what I was just talking about related to the draft is, how about free agency? All right, how about free agency? Do you wish the Falcons signed Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo to those contracts? No. Taylor Heineke was overpaid compared to what Baker Mayfield and Gardner Minshew got. So, yeah, you can make a fair claim that Baker and Gardner Minshew, especially for what they were paid, would have been a much better signing than Taylor Heineke. And I don't disagree. What I would say to you is, where were you in March last year when these guys were on the market? Because if you were not advocating for them to be signed by the Falcons, then maybe lower your criticism a little bit. What about the year before in free agency? Jameis? Jameis is awesome. I mean, he's so fun. But then again, it's Jameis. Mariota was the Falcons' quarterback decision, and there weren't a lot of other better options out there. Mitchell Trubisky has done really nothing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tyrod Taylor has been okay for the Giants, but hasn't been very available for them when they needed him. And Jacoby Brissett, for a 1-year, $4.6 million contract, is probably / definitely the best value of all 5 QBs on screen. So yeah, Arthur Smith made mistakes, guys. But what NFL head coach and GM does not make a mistake in free agency or the draft? So my big point here is Arthur Smith is guilty for the QB decisions that were made. He played a part of them, and they were wrong decisions. They were. But it's not like he passed on great options. It's not like he picked Desmond Ridder the pick before a Pro Bowl quarterback was taken. It's not like he signed Marcus Mariota without signing Jacoby Brissett, who would go on to win the Super Bowl for the Browns. Were there better moves out there? Yes, but not by a lot. And no one at the time was thinking that's what the Falcons should have done. So yeah, I do have a bit of empathy for Arthur Smith because I don't think he's an awful coach. Is he the best coach? No. Can you do better? Yes. But is he to blame for everything that went down in Atlanta over the last 3 years? He's not the one throwing the ball or turning it over. At a certain point, more blame needs to be assigned to the players and their lack of execution. Let's switch gears and let's talk head coaching candidates here because the list appears to be getting closer and closer to a finalized list. The Athletic put out a couple of names to keep an eye on. Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh, we'll talk more about him in a little bit. Ben Johnson, Eric Bieniemy, Bobby Slowick, Brian Callahan, Ejiro Evero, Brian Flores, and Mike McDonald are all names to keep an eye on, according to The Athletic, as potential candidates for the next Falcons head coaching job. Now, the Tennessee Titans, as we discussed earlier, moved on from Mike Vrabel today, which means there are 6 current openings. And if I had to rank the 6 current openings, I think the Chargers is the number 1 job by a wide margin. They have a top 5 pick. They have Justin Herbert, and it's sunny California. Like, that's going to be very tough for a head coach candidate to pass on. So the Chargers, in my eyes, is the best opening by a wide mile. The Atlanta Falcons and Washington Commanders, I think you can argue for either of these being number 2. I think the Falcons are just a bit of a more stable organization, although the Commanders with new ownership, there's a lot of unknown to that, but they do have a better draft pick than Atlanta, and they could get a Drake May or Jaden Daniels. So if you really think one of those two guys is going to be a Pro Bowl type quarterback, it's tough to pass on the Washington gig for Atlanta's number 8 pick. The Raiders is an interesting spot. It's Las Vegas, so similar to Los Angeles. That's always going to attract a lot of attention, but their pick is worse than the Falcons, and as an organization, they always seem to be getting in their own way. The Tennessee Titans, I don't quite know what they have to hold on moving forward to. Like, Will Levis showed some good flashes, but I don't think Will Levis showed us that he is a guaranteed franchise QB. And the Panthers is an absolute dumpster fire of a job. I would not touch that with a 10-foot pole. That is career suicide. So here is the Falcons' dream scenario from my eyes. Jim Harbaugh goes to the Chargers. I know we'd all love to have Jim Harbaugh come down to Atlanta, but I don't see Harbaugh passing on the Chargers job for the Falcons job. So let's keep it a little bit realistic, even though it's a dream scenario. So Harbaugh goes to the Chargers. Bill Belichick is traded to Washington. That way we don't have to worry about Belichick coming down to Atlanta. And then Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel picks Atlanta. I think Mike Vrabel is going to go to New England, but like I said, it is a dream scenario. So if you can get the Chargers job crossed off the list, that's Harbaugh, okay? And then the second job, the Washington Commanders job or the Falcons job, that is Bill Belichick. And it's now the number 1 head coaching candidate of all the coordinators this year, Ben Johnson, the Lions OC. He looks at that board of 6 teams, and there's already 2 of them crossed off, LA and Washington. And Atlanta's the next highest team on that list. A top 10 pick, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, a pretty average defense. It's not a bad starting spot for a head coach for the first time. So I think that is the dream scenario to get Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel. But again, I think Mike Vrabel is going to New England. The Falcons' best head coaching possibility. Now, who do you want the Falcons to hire? I have taken up way too much of your Tuesday afternoon. So get in the comment section right now and let me know who your number 1 guy is. All bets are off. Give me the number 1 head coaching candidate you want to see stalking the Falcons sidelines next year. That will do it for us on today's show. If you enjoyed our content, consider subscribing to the channel, like the video, all that cliche YouTube stuff, and we'll see you all later.